Once again, good morning to our precious teacher, Gen Rinpoche, Tashi Delay, and good morning to our interpreter, Katrina Brooks, and welcome to everyone online. Happy Losar. And given all the unfolding events in the world, we're so fortunate to have time this morning with Geshe Thabkhe to train our minds in love and compassion, serenity and wisdom. So you can find the link to the prayers in the chat box. And if you have any questions about the teachings, you can post those in the chat box and we'll share those with Geshe Thabkhe. And so now we'll begin with some prayers and recitations.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one thus gone, foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, and I bow, with pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, supreme God, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I bow. Great, compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom, too well established in the trainings, the holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the foe of faults. And the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn, Mount Meru, foreland, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offer to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayame. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Oh, yeah. That is it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that is it. Oh, to better one of the subject I took when I was going to some bird said that when I told a charge or more. That the Nikas would. Garage Kiwan a Kiwa Cutie. This some janky turned to the net tart to be some janky turned to well and never tart to be Sanja Yakova Sambu Tarshimba. Landur the neck can be Kimba Tarshimba. Tam Japan, your tam you also talk by Sanja Yakova. Simja Tamja turn to be Simja Tamja turn, never you also talk by connected to be Comanche Toba Chavism. Or the Ichidone, the Topjig Lam Tambechu, Sanja Sube Tambechu, Camdiliane, Tanda. Oh, we should Yangi Sambe, singing Sambe. Golo Chanju with some set on the December shoes or teacher.
So here we should think that we have this continuum going from eon to eon through eons, and we are striving to attain this state of Buddhahood, the state in which we know without mistake, without error, all of the points of what are to be adopted and what is to be abandoned in order to be able to benefit other sentient beings. And so we should think that by any means necessary, I am going to attain this state of Buddhahood, which is free from all faults and has fully developed all qualities. And in order to do that, I am going to, on this occasion, listen to these teachings for that purpose, to be able to affect such a state, to be able to benefit all sentient beings. And in that way, we should set our motivation, a bodhicitta motivation for listening to these teachings.
Oh, yeah, that cousin had the change at the Hardongi Kuso said in Roswa. Hardongi Kuso said, some judge Sheswa. Take our session, Kibutambala Tembas, Ra. Kibutambala Tembas. When a mount of Turbas. And the Kibutambala Temba. Mount of Turba, Yonsu Jawa Soda. Mount of Turba Yonsu Jawa. Money Chushi Sembas, some Sheswa. Oh, that Kibutambala Tembas, Kibutamba del Kadich Corsana. That tell you catch you the Kashi Sheswa. Oh, ne. Janicas. Mount of Turba. Kibutamba Corantin Sag, the Russian is Namado Telaya, Mune Turba Mambu Yange, Mount Turba, and 6 sables in the pa Gotum Ge, Roa, and then you did on the back on the Shenge, Roa, Savatan Tambasudua. Oh, Tene, go a Sabasudua. I church the coach Shenge to come out with that she take on the college of Gomabuna, take you at the service or in this school. More teaching,
Oh. So as for what we had covered in the text last time, we had gone through the prerequisites of insight. And so the three basic prerequisites are relying upon holy persons, seriously seeking out extensive instruction, and proper contemplation. So here, as far as relying on holy beings, that teacher, that person that one is going to rely on needs to have certain qualities. So here it's explained that that person themselves should have much learning, have sought out many different teachings, and they should be able to explain those clearly to others. In addition, they should be endowed with love and compassion, which motivates them to actually explain those kinds of teachings. And finally, they should be able to withstand hardship, whatever sort of difficulty arises. They should be able to bear with that, have forbearance in the face of that in order to benefit others.
This one, all the Kibutambala Tembas, this one. That Kibutamba, the Mount Turbas, Koran Turba Mambuchi Chaja, which machine and Chandra shared the Sabian Gumato. Mount Turbas, this one. Oh, Tene, Mount Turbas. You need 6 sables in the Kodwa. Need them to us over Samuel. Oh, 내가 지는 가라시는 something. 어떤 증매죠. 야. 저때 그 장저당 예정을 써봐. 저거 남샤야 보지 반지 셈바 고도와 산제 좀 된데 막 송부 송부들이야. 뒤제 감다 삼바다 왕불라 뜨네. 장저당 예정. 카둘은 거면 내주다 틈바다 밑틈바 송샤바다. 니 최지를 봐도 좀 아버지 송샤가 어때서 강거대 야부지 셈바체네. 니 시한을 쉐고요도. 어디지려나.
So, again, as far as relying upon holy beings, we need to have a teacher, a holy being who themselves has sought out much learning. Because if they don't know these things, there's no way they could explain them to others. And there are many various teachings. The Buddha gave teachings in accordance with the various dispositions, needs of his disciples. And so, a teacher, a holy being that one is going to rely upon, needs to understand that kind of what is definitive, what is in need of interpretation. So what can be kind of taken directly accords with the actual nature of things and what requires some level of interpretation. So here, these teachings of the Buddha are given in stages, and a proper teacher needs to have a good understanding of that.
뭐야, 다들 아주 거시셔서 봐마시. 산지에 송들이야 장도된 게좀 망보요래서. 뒤전 가실이야 그 다유바 송상gen다 가실이야 다 매바 송사 가실이야 다유 마유 렘마 잡을서와 어때서 용해야 장중에도 망보 용해야 산지 좀 된데 급디 송사 그 뒤제데 감다 삼바다 발anya 그 단다시에는 그 삼을 가르코도 펜바도 네바도 된대제 그 아니 가실이네 주다 마투바 그 네급 송사고 요도 터도데 그 뭐네지 뭐비네지다 투바 레야 티니치고 와도 단다르테 이나 내가 아니 송지 장도 당게 마보 용거 전다지 때려도 야.
So the teachings of the Buddha, as we have seen, are quite varied in terms of the different meanings that are taught, because the Buddha is teaching to the needs of various disciples, their various dispositions, latent imprints, and so forth. So to some, he taught that there is a self, to others that there is no self, to others he didn't give an answer whether there is a self or not. And so here, this is in accordance with the kinds of dispositions and needs of disciples in order to be able to ultimately lead them to the kind of proper meaning, understanding of reality. But in terms of according with the kinds of needs of disciples, temporarily the Buddha taught something that may not actually accord with reality in order to temporarily benefit a particular disciple. So it's important to kind of understand that process.
Oh yeah, 다들 되려서 신라 니게 교소된 바스고 신라 니게 교소된 바스 다 검무시 잡고라 못해 식도 띵에를 찾은 거야 정말 셰사라 텔레카르시도스나 에너지 세야들이야 샬라 체베 서와자고베 루스조베 샬라 속바니 뜻방고래서 자기가 말했어 되네 미팅바 많이 봐서 소소 감라 트바 많이 봐 감다 메트베스 자기가 말했어 애니 세게 최신 버쳐고래서 세 마부 마사서 동바 마부 샤체니 주에 들려라 용거도 어떤지 송송아 나 디스타
So then having sort of described the prerequisites for serenity and insight, it goes into the kind of common prerequisites, or then one should enter into meditation. And so prior to that, it describes how one should give up that which is harmful to others, including eating meat, which involves harming others, as well as eating with moderation, not eating too much or too little, and avoid foods that are not conducive to health. So one should, in this way, sort of set the proper conditions and then enter into the actual meditation.
Tikarish는 도와주 메이크업스 켈로즈 강가 밀야 셀론지 김네 김규체 누구야다 네 코라주 가르테 나티 사는 마토 인디코 마세 요마르도 Tindechen do ka sundangi yorte namsung tagbe shasigra. Ene kola gune chene keje trip ku yorto chendaro ji kesla puna. Kiran shadi kariche du sebara kange shaye sebra. Ene te tromne nyebe sere ni shanda ene tra yorto. O kiran tu gindin tu pegri samjo ene te chebe sina ene sacho yomare misha sekatiri yora. O dichi lamne yamudo chida masena de yakshira chondu tubara. Simjen liya chawachi yore samche se masena pension yungurdo. Taine yan doa kapso sumshaba. Kelonga shili na yobate o tende resti chene do.
No. So here, in terms of yogis avoiding eating fish and meat and so forth, we see in the Mahayana teachings many points where they explain the faults of eating meat. You're obviously causing harm to others if you kill them and eat them. But we should understand that there is that sort of prescription according to the Mahayana. But then when we look at the Vinaya teachings, it's actually allowed for monastics to eat meat because at the time when they were going and receiving alms from various households, going household to household, they would accept whatever was given to them. They didn't go to households and say, oh no, I'm not allowed to eat that, or I don't get to have this. What was forbidden is having someone specifically go and get meat for you, like requesting it or having someone specifically prepare it for you. So here we should understand the kind of, in general, if we are able to avoid eating meat, that is better, as we are avoiding harm to animals. But there is in the Vinaya an allowance for those who are receiving from others to eat meat that is sort of clean in these three ways, not specifically killed for them and so forth.
Oh yeah, tambu shine kom tene shine trup chane. Ne ladon kom ladon trup go yordo. Oh shila niga kombalia ni tambu chorwasti shegdoa. Chorala so be keju sum shine choro de shegdoa. Oh chowa shedu so tanda de ngaju kare chida. Choye chedu lamri nala chi songdo ta to chipar chire. Oh dina tudu ristoa. 내가 지도자라 구순도 있다 tambu 수수 대사가 내지 장마서고도 내 구군데 구당 송도 투도 주게나 대된도 샴스그라 내 매나 지미지 안가 전에 되게 얼노 여네 때문에 군도 지체 총내 하고데 제마이나 가리나데 저는 구송 투 댄스 고거라 구산제 구지체 아니 송기테 배체체 산제 송샤베 송치체 투기때 최대치 숨마다 된다지 내가 지도를 잘라서 소소 대사지 장마 야보세 지단 그 텔레페이 마부송도 내가 지도제 장마 써야 될이야 당간 줄로지 마부셔야 내가 가르쳐래 다들 되게 저래 랑게 이 다원을 좋아서 생기 이 다원을 좋아서 제배 레서 봐서 신대는 라유도 깨와서라 rang sangmaji tebe soso sem tangbu yore mi tene tadu sem tangbu yongora ene jebo ne to tesa yabu se to ko kiasiman jebe yidonga tende kia ne ta soso yidonga tende kia lesa gora ene sangma de ko kabu ne chema sangme hala soba ya ne hayu le soba tende kia pen yorto o ti duko ngema de ngodo pakba lam chungba se de 그 지다 시에는 자나 하마고 왕부티고 싶지 살아 아니 또 힌두도 같이 수시로 제 니마치 그질 내 용마를 캐나 유수티 마찬 가그레스 용마르세 식니람네 식당부들랍도 니바디 용고요 마로 니바들랍도 당부 제르고 하래 배 왕부티고 싶사도 아니 산제 좀 된데 배 산제 좀 되단 제네 아니 그 당아 니 가게 생매 강가 또 같이 비테네 로좀 제마서 테네
It seems that Geshe has dropped off, so we'll just wait a few minutes they rejoin. Katrina, you want to go ahead and finish translating that last part?
Yeah, so here, as for where we were at, what we've gone through in the text, then it says once we've assembled all the prerequisites, we should enter into meditation. And one begins by meditating on serenity. And once one has accomplished serenity, then one proceeds to insight. So here it describes kind of the preparatory practices that one should engage in. We see sometimes in the Lam Rim describing the sort of 6 preparatory practices before one engages in a meditation session. So here, this begins with cleaning the space. And then once we have cleaned our space, we set up an altar. And an altar can have actual representations of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind. Or if we don't actually have those, we could imagine this. Now, normally, if one is setting up an altar, one puts a body of the Buddha, a physical representation to represent the body of a Buddha. We put a book to represent the speech of a Buddha, a pecha or a book. And then we put a stupa to represent the mind of a Buddha. And so here, one might think that like cleaning the space, making that nice is something that isn't very significant, but it's actually really a beneficial practice for us to engage in. Oh, yeah. Tanda lasa. So tissue ani lamchungi drungi yangyar suno nanda. Yeah. So here, there are benefits of cleaning the place in terms of being able to purify one's own mind, purify the minds of others. It creates the karma to be born in a pleasant place, in somewhere that's a beautiful environment, as well as potentially being born in a heavenly realm. So Geshe-la was explaining that this sort of story of the importance of cleaning. So I'll let him get back to that story. Sik 장난 다 직 니바디 제기로 와 거기 왜? 다 연결수로나 다 람중게.
야야. 다시 해야 되는 거다. 제가 어디 파발람 좀 봤은 봐. 파발람 좀 봤은 게 담보고 온부 뜨고 싶어서 살아. 얘네 힌두도 봐 최랍가신 가스가 사카신 감각이 마 디케라 연구로 좀 연구 말했어. 봐. 럽좀 맞아 유사래. 그래서 그 온부 뜨고 제 식니람나 식 당보들랍도 니바들랍도 당보 제사래. 아니 어쩌네 럽좀 용사 말했어. 어더니 제마고 산제 소년 패배 그도 람가실에 제도와 ene ko cha 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 ta nga wang bu tu she ye ma che lo cho che gu de sa ne ni ta nga to ma bu cha le ke ba ma bu cha do ye ka ga ge che ra lo cho yong gu ma de so sa ene sa je ma che ra lo cho yong gu de che re ba ya bu de che ra me shin ba de che ra ha ku to a se ti ko de ba ya bu de se do nga zu ka she me shin ba de she na sha gu do so ka de ba ha ma bu de chong gu do 그때 날 신기 메두사 사티하고 야고레스 에네코 담부케라쇼세 딘두바주고 샵자 한국도 치초래 득바다야던다 케라삼바 상보시트도 치세 에네 대체리아 코도지 야도 신이 에네 진네 개잡세 줄라카 개잡초데 뒤바 트마타 트마바시체 에코데자 벨하사 남다체 개잡 버루질 그 삼로코데 or the Sadi Mares, that Tipa said, Sai to the Mari Tipa would there. Nine young betty to Kodunga, Jetadola Soba to Sumbioresa. There's a dog what you go some Korakora Samakore. Sadangazuke, Dusanko, Simdicur to Kangapa, Tan, and Mabasu, some Yamdun do Samutan. Jamakora Dratchum Ben Debuto Kichi or not Sicilia. Or Tindico. Negan Chidurcella, Chiducia to the Kosamutan and a pay Shambuora. 내가 지도자라 구순도지 때점바서는 구순도 때 덤베 구시체 존나로와 덤베 구시 구이때 사제 구숙 때로와 아니 투그 때 최대 연애 야보로와 순그 사제 순변 도시 연애 야보로와 어떤데시 숨스코르 구순도지 때점바다 현대 트라케브는 고만 보샴제 최바트도 야부쳐고라 망부 맨날 소소 신도를 이제 추피는 되게 와라 소소 카피에나 티피 얘네 잠불을 니치 가서리 님만 나와 초단 정불을 매도를 속바 타고 마서 이동에 사자망부 열어서 피는 되게 했잖아 나라도 잠불이 메신저 소소에 와면 차지와래 저도 야가도 피는 되고 다들 내가 지도자라 구선토지 때한테 봤어 Chibayo meba tsela koven zebar shambas. Ale tambuchi labga tosma dojimra. Nye tuduchi labs and kala tuduchi lab degree. Chibayo meba tsela koven zebar shamba. Ne choba shamya serwa keba yene keba shambana. Chunjabadan shindo na karina chipi na digora. Sozo saya tuya karina chipire. Chidan sozo sunam saya tandare mato sanjel ko chuya meba da tindre tike yo marwa. Sozo longche sukta tude chala so karo yaga yene. Tulo sabachi kona samja yamba laye ko meji to kunila se sanjeda tinde pure mebachi do soso longche kanga phame o tini cheba beli ne yinjeb de mambu pure chude semna meba changma ke chimbu yenge chu changma sonja oti phe chimbu yosora o tibje cheba yoma ba chela ko banje cheba yoma ba se de tibasa ne sa shabe ngobutin de pure da mabu chen mabu ne de yaga de songora Chebade, Tigbasa saw the mind bear, so young dog, so my lawsuit chene. Noble Jala Saya, the social children, timber, social college and sub of my botanician, Madrido, share some J. Sabala soba. That tim that gave a knocks on a sober authentication, Madrid. Cheba, you may ba jealous, go and Jeber Shambas, and it's sham. Cheba, you may go and Jebashua. Then they were. Then they were said, that's also Yato de Gora, then Tabuja, Jablotos, Toshan, Dudos Masse. Then they were like, Namna, the true, doing them candid was true, doing cigarette gas, true, and then candid, then they were Namna children, they couldn't. Come to some gay, come to Sanjucho to some key, or come to some gay, good and genius showers, or teenage labs and Alamanduchas. Yeah.
No, this. So, no. So here again, regarding the benefits of cleaning one's place, there is this kind of famous story of this very dull-witted individual. He's known as like Lam Chungpa, or like the smaller path. He had gone to all sorts of different teachers trying to get advice about how to practice, and they all thought he was too stupid. They would all sort of be like, well, when we try to teach you something, you learn the first word, or like if you remember the second word, you've forgotten the first word, and so forth. He was very dull and unable to really pick up any kind of teachings that were given to him. But finally, he encountered the Buddha, and he prostrated to the Buddha, and he said, you know, I'm really quite a dull disciple, and I don't know that I will be able to ever sort of train in any kind of teachings. I've been to many teachers, and they can't seem to help me. And the Buddha said to him, no, really, you actually have a good mind. And sometimes it can be the case that people who think they know many things don't actually know a lot, but somebody that doesn't think they know is in a better sort of position. And so he began by putting Lam Chungpa to work, sort of cleaning the area where the monks would take off their shoes in order to create some merit. And finally, he graduated to cleaning the temple. And as he would do this, the Buddha told him to say, clean away the dust, purify the stains. And so as he's doing this kind of practice, suddenly he realizes that it's not about the sort of external physical world, but it's about his own mind. It's about purifying our own afflictions, getting rid of all of those mental stains. And so eventually, based upon that teaching, it was exactly what he needed. He was able to become an arhat. And so if we understand the kind of benefits and engage in cleaning in this way, it can be something that is incredibly beneficial. So that's the first point of these preparatory practices, is cleaning our space. And then putting forth representations of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind. Again, we can have physical representations or do so through imagination. If we have like a statue of the Buddha that is representative of the Buddha's body, a sutra, some kind of text, can represent the speech of the Buddha, and usually a stupa represents his mind. And so if we put out offerings in addition, that is okay. We also don't have to put out offerings. They can be as extensive as we would like or as limited. But it's really, if we can imagine making offerings of everything within the world that we own, as well as sort of the world itself, everything that's unowned, the sun and the moon, the whole universe, making that kind of extensive offering is a very powerful way to make merit. It's not as though the Buddha needs any of these things or these enlightened beings need to make use of them, but by offering the things that we have, use, and enjoy is a very powerful way to create merit. And so all of our offerings should be sort of clean and without any kind of bad origin, somehow unpure because they are, say, gotten through bad livelihood or through the black market or something like that. We should be offering things, whether it's water or any other sort of fruits or flowers, without any kind of stinginess, without any sort of holding back, and also things that were not gotten in the wrong kind of a way. And so then once we have done that, we should get comfortable. And again, this means getting into the posture of Vairocana, either described as having 7 or 8 points. And then once we have done that, we engage in the practice of going for refuge and generating bodhicitta.
내가 지도 잘 구소도 때는 버리버셔라. 최바의 샴베된 버리버셔라. 근데 류남나게 최된 된게 그네. 담도 심게 재미시 부단 정해 줘서도. 다 류남나 최된 된 겐데 가르쳐내 되기도. 어때 공개되지 그 로가 졸음되지 로가 로스 제베는 공개하기 요삼제 담부요한테 케어라. 다 삼다데 야 현다데 삼코에 연결하라. 저 공개도 그 도로 맨다도 세션에 Mixation did on that teaching some Samuel Savage Keora. Lunamna shoot and this consideration. Company Dojikidum Jete to Nayabura. Nakambanaga you today in a Madena degree. Kidum Chase and the degree same backers. Or Jenny Company Kidum Chase. Can't the design degree. Not a time in the Uzu Yamar, Uzu Jamani, Comte Pashan, Cambanaya that will sometime degra. Oh, teacher. Tene lagba de tebe te sha lagba yema tebe te sha te kan de yeba de sha ene de tebunye de tete sira de she dushe tebe te sha gora de tebe te sha gora o tu sira ene pungbani jambu sangora pungbu pa jo chuje me pungbani pa jambu che de gora kesin dadar sa kesi de ya jambu che de gora ga zum zum de je ani ku jora ya ko zo she de gora Geshe Dadar Sasche. Oh, ne mig nature person, mig the pond in it and then Nami Mamutungura, the Echum than any Quanyangara, the Dredge is a natural person, mig natural mapper, Naguzel Mate Besos tender it on the summer Tandi Kotagina man, Tonachagumar, Kotambuta to Shagura, Inteneco Missum Summer Tanguna Keshe Dachabayomare. Oh, it is a mig natural person, so that you the Tonda. Nagun dosi the reche nane teve pato tambur san the reche tambu deva and the mangaruchi shavan deka to level service. Pen the reche and Dumara, pen the reche and the to Skadura Stevan, the reche. Oh, teacher. Ane Minachi pap. So that you Chodora Sorwa, Terran Websushan, you can deshaun the nation shower. See the Dalia shower. Yeah. Caras long Mibamaga carry Sarah. Says the tell her Sarah. Oh, Lunamnaga should 10 call oot Trabaina. Nicare and Urdo. Care to Lunamna should to them. Sarsuma. Other mountains to do Slamna.
No. So again, when we're going through these preparatory practices, we clean the space, we set up an altar, make offerings, and get comfortable in this position of Vairocana with either 7 or 8 sort of points to that. Go for refuge, bodhicitta, and do the 4 immeasurables followed by a mandala offering. So here, if we sort of, we should sort of set a kind of a ritual or a schedule for doing this kind of practice. And we should, sitting in the particular posture of Vairocana helps us to sort of get in the frame of mind that we are doing meditation. Like if we were to wear special clothes for it or something, it's to make sure that we really are sitting down with a purpose and doing this with a purpose. And so here again, when it comes to sitting in this posture, if we are able to do, say, the full Vajra position, that is great for our sitting practice. But if it's something that's really uncomfortable or unable for us to do, we shouldn't force it, because otherwise you're just going to be sitting there thinking about how uncomfortable it is. You won't be able to meditate. So whether we're doing a half Vajra, full Vajra, or sit in some other way that is comfortable for us, we should have this kind of posture that involves first, again, being sort of sitting up properly and having a straight kind of a posture. And so one should, when it comes to like our shoulders should be level and even. When it comes to our spine should be straight. It should be, we shouldn't be sort of like leaning forward or leaning too far back, like sort of bent over. It's going to make us want to fall asleep, for example. And our eyes should rest at the tip of our nose. If we have them sort of wide open, we can get distracted to a lot of things, or if we close them, we could either fall asleep or sort of fall into running after our thoughts. So we should have our sort of eyes naturally kind of restfully falling at the tip of our nose. When it comes to the mouth, we should have our sort of teeth and lips in a normal, natural kind of position. And it's recommended to put your tongue at the top of the palate, and that's to aid with not having our throat get dry or having issues with that. And so once we have this kind of these elements of the posture, they then add the eighth sort of element of this posture of Vairocana, which is counting the breath, following the breath.
Oh yeah. Lunamdan Sudan come Tundanum Tandakuna. Tamdu Simgi, Semishi Kudan Jengiskuda, or the any color de church. That's Sanjay Suzaman done and the rest Sanjay Sudan Source and Chanju was the town jobs. Dajin Sojaman, Dollar Pen Sanjan Dover shows, Chanju Simda, and let them doing it in Dogoda. And this Simjet Tamjet Dawada to the Tonga to say Semishi Dogoda. Tonga made Dawada Madaniri and yet a town never to said Dogoda. Jamdu Simji Semishi Kudan Jengisas, Yato Terra, and Tambu Jamdu Samuta, Semji Samuta, Doa, Jamdu Simji Semishi Samuta, to the Tindoa. Oh, Tini Tichelia. Then do you not shoot in the Jamdu. So she said the bus. Tichelia, and it dunia, so Temba Sanji from the Della Sobata, Chunas, Mabu Samuta Yoto. Oh, Catching to the Samuta, you touch the Mocha. Temba Sanji from the Della Soba, can you tell me about the shooter years and Babach and the Dura? Oh, Ticasa. So she said the bus. So Sonam Sasagashi, Sanjay the Chanjusemba, Pardon Babachi, Social de Shuyu, Samsa Samatan and Riana, Sanjay Jitenji can't tell me about Sanjay, tell me about Shude Yordo, or to some of Babachi and tell sort of was Nedra. So she said there was. And Saxan Jine to by Yala to Madrid to Ambassador. Saxan Jine to Basuduta. So saya that the Bachaya could be negatible, the Saxon Geneto by Yalatumba, Mendrete Chabambasudua. And then I don't know, you say, Chacha, Choju Sanja, just gender, shoot the use some Tezula social, Chacha, use some Sanja, Tom, Kawash, the social literature, Kusunku Burger, and Sanja, you and that Tembacone, Chacha, Wachera. And it's Chaba Ph. Tagbus and a church. Tikba Toba member Chendel Sabo, Tikba Tamja, Simjala Sawacha, so Tikba Tamja, the Madi, what is a Shabache, Charge of Chishima. Chisuira, Kiwasa, Muji Sanje, the Chanju Samba, that under Simje, Marajan Dabu, Kiwasa Shange, Simba Sudin Sabala Soba Kiwasa, and some pay what are some Chisuira, charges of Chisuira. Guishes the Sanje, Sanje, and two muscle shoot and get Solia, Chusura, Simjet Tamja, and Pembe, Chusura, so at them, Chusung, Shade, Shiba, Mebache. Then you come down, maybe some down, and then come to Kanjamado. Sanje, and then come like two muscle, Tanda shoot, they will attend the order to the sort of Guada. Then he actually soon 다 양헬에 대변 제발 땡긴 섬사 공개투 양헬에 먼저 수로지 수수수 때문에 이 수기 이제 셰기 셰송 섬사 매바치오라 제수이라 그시 소와세 양헬에 믿어 소왔다 다 들려서서 다와름 붙일라 소와다데 현태줄에 소왔다니 요즘 부수기 섬사 수기 캘린세송 섬사 삼을단 야고요 냠댕입니다 그것이 소화에 아니 제대로 개와디 속상한 거거든. 다 소소 개월을 전부 싸게 와다. 야라 좀 봐도 싹싹이 내도 버서도 뒷발 샤기 와라. 뒷발 장기 와라. 개와 싸게 와라. 개와 차차 와다. 개와 싸게 와라. 최바세 제수 차차 와다. 저기 샥바디 뒷발 장기도 와. 현대 강가 소싸게 와도 저 싹싹이 내가 뒤에 뒷발 당서 전부 ene cholab chabu sagi wara odi sakchang ne tu ba yala tu ba mendle da cha an bena ni sashi mendle shi putin de chawda pijelam na
So here, then once one is in this posture, one usually sets one's motivation by engaging in refuge and bodhicitta, as well as the four immeasurables. So here, this is something where we can say the sort of refuge formula, like what we have recited, I go for refuge until I'm awakened, and so forth. And this encompasses the kind of motivation of refuge and the attitude of bodhicitta, as well as going through these four immeasurables, may all sentient beings abide in equanimity and so forth. And we should really reflect upon these, reflect on refuge, reflect on bodhicitta. And as we are saying the four immeasurables, really make that sincere. And then this is followed in the 6 preparatory practices by making requests to the merit field. So this encompasses doing the 7-limbed prayer or puja and making a mandala offering. So here, as we are doing this, we can imagine this kind of refuge field with the Buddhas and countless bodhisattvas. And again, we're not just sort of imagining or thinking about this realm, but countless realms in which these Buddhas and bodhisattvas abide. And we're making this kind of we're going through the 7-limbed prayer in order to accumulate merit and purify our negativities, because it contains all of the essential points of that. So as we imagine this merit field, whether we see that as like a single solitary Buddha, or we really are sort of visualizing countless realms filled with countless Buddhas and bodhisattvas, we recall the kinds of qualities of these enlightened beings as we make prostrations, whether we're doing physical prostrations or we're doing those mentally. We make offerings. Again, this is another part of accumulating merit. And then we engage in purifying our negativities. This is really the point of confession, of recalling all of those countless negative actions that we have accumulated through countless previous lives and generating a sense of regret and trying to purify them. And then we engage in rejoicing not just in the merits that we have created, but in those of enlightened beings and all other sentient beings. This is, again, a very powerful way to generate positive energy, to positive merit. And then we request teachings from the Buddhas. We request that they give us the Dharma and continue to teach. And then we beseech that they remain. And again, this is not just the Buddhas, bodhisattvas in our realms, but in all countless realms, asking that they not pass into nirvana, but remain and teach us. And we should imagine too that they accept this request, whether we are making this sort of request, beseeching all of these countless Buddhas and bodhisattvas, or whether we are thinking of our own teachers, like say His Holiness the Dalai Lama, imagining that they are accepting our request that they remain for a long time. And finally, we end this with dedicating all of these virtues toward perfect enlightenment. So this, again, it contains all of the really pith, the essential points of accumulating merit and purifying our negativities. And so in this way, we should engage in this 7-limb practice as we sit down to begin our meditation.
Oh yeah. Kone tension busum je kone soata basero. Kawale su ka yajana man. Tuishana. Tamde chami. Ore tene choshin chen tamba chara. this is on net of Yana to Memento Sera. And it turns and Busum Bicon so on the Vasera. To that Shambusum Bicon so on the Vasera. That naked Susu Karakunguina, Shanzu Sem Kunguina, Chamba Kunguina, Nizu Kunguina, all the touching, but in the sometime Negra. That's the teaching you love this. Tata Masimjetam, the Shinila Maguban Sundo. The Lam Sang Masigura activation in Maguban Sunday. Netanya Suchaman in the concert and the Chigi Tanzila Soba. Gun Sangmatam Jet and Newton Gaba Chingil of the Susigora. Missinila Gubane, Milube Sunju, Sanjay Koba Matuba Party, and then Sangmatam Kan Joba Negula Chingil of the Susigora. And it is a Kiola. Chinaji Parja Tamjan Yoshua Chita Naga Parja Karina Tezu Tamjan Yoshua Chingil of the Swat of Gora. To that's all the social captain Shine Kunguine Shine Kiwala, Patucheva Tamjan Dobanati, Yunda Kanga Yoba Kili Kiwasera. A lot of Kunguina, the Chamba Kunguina, Niji Kunguna Karina Til Sasura. Oh, yeah.
So following then the 7-limb prayer and actually offering a mandala, so we can do the this ground anointed with incense and so forth. So following that, we make requests for these 3 great purposes. So this is in the our daily guru yoga, this sort of request in which we make a request to be able to in the temporary sort of sense bring to completion, to perfect all of the sort of meditations that we are engaging in. So this says from our any sort of not having respect for the guru all the way up until the very end of the path. So in terms of generating this quality of having respect for the guru all the way until the path of no more training. We make this sort of request to be able to bring those to completion and to be able to eliminate any sort of obstacles, inner or outer obstacles to completing those sorts of practices. So in the temporary, if we are, say, meditating on serenity, we make this request that our practice of serenity may be brought to completion and any sort of obstacles may be removed, or whether we are doing insight or whatever it may be. This is the kind of, we should make requests to this merit field.
Oh, yeah, that's the Geshe Yora Kasura. Oh, that is the matter. The Simba. Because it's Saturday. Oh, that's Shesar, because it's Shesar, the Tazura, Tazunga, the Shesara. Oh, the Juja. The Vajil matter. Oh, that is. Oh, that and the Dirida, Sabadelia, the name, Shinegi, that and the Tension Busum Bicona Sota Basarvata, Shinemushi Comedera, Computer Tambushine, Comshine Culication, and a lot of Comguada. That Shinesia Kurang Oka Rese, Tambuti Nebachora, anything Comguada. Shine more than dinner shake on there. Until a Thomas Shine Tubarcha de Shiriji Yula number in our Shine, now to Mipala Kundu Rangi Nagi, and Jugbe Kawada, Shindu Chambada, and Dembe Semi La, Nebane Shine Shishaos. Shine said, Nazu Comje Yuro Chick, Tatu Comje Yula Mambu or Karakomna Dure, China, Suda Kawada Pomba, Tende Komna during Nazu Nambata Sanje, Kukometa, Shandat, and Comje Mambu or Mikba Chigla, me, Tell us some of the time the Chiriji Yula Yama Shigura. Shine Suda, Chiriji Yula Pass, so Comjaka in a Tisha, Shandal Passam Dugudono Tipa Shiwach and Tsuku, Yansuku, the Dijera. And it tell us Mikba Ness, the Mikba to the same Neatera. Sanje Kudichu Konguna, Sanje Kudila Mikba to Sune, and the part to Dugudono Yatsu Tichura. Do Tagina, Sanje Kungu, some Shine Kungu, some Jaco. Sometimes they are done. And Sanje Kudish Kungu, and Tisamata. Sometimes down them said they can do Tata Degmarwa. Padro Yansu Bekaskal Dosha Semdera. Tehakova Chora Yatsu Kugura. Yanti something the Yama, Nikudu Yanti Sasaja Yashagura. 근데 망보 제전에 유정으로 땅 거라. 단단가라서 시베나라 유래 내야게 심내서지 요래. 그리 삼로 단두자 또 심대가 대대그라. 아니 안 줘보죠 심신다 가스갈 파트도리 니쿠루라. 자 뒤야 르르 땅 거라. 내서지를 심템부 속여라. 신에서 들어와. 어디고 네 단단가서 될 가르던다 kum고르스나 동반이 똑벌하도 동반이 무슨도 똑벌하도 줄에 제거래. 뒤께와라 신의 신에면은 무슨도 또투요 말아. 뒤던달로 고요래. 동반이 무슨도 똑벌하도 끼와라. 너도 신의 고요래. 뒤던달 공고래. 아니 신의 톱선한데 동반이 고매다. 샹주고 셈고야 잠바 고매야 닝지 고매야 어떨 가르 고매야 있네 뒤 검초요라. 뒤인두산 뒤 양에 그래 낭벌이야. 지단 신에도 치르바라 요라도. 치르바 다음에도 동반이 돼서 공부요 말아. 셈코라 템부 짱짱 요에 된다 하지. 아니 신의 톱사서나 군주배 쳐진다 제바체세. 하동 톱이야 요라. 하동이야 동반이 똑벌 하동 연구 말에. 현다진들이야 대배 감스는 거라서 감대로 송감스도 딜하이 감 송감스 땅부대라. 자 밀이야 꽤 류불 껴도 셈레 껴도 셈남도 담메다 마부용게 류대더니 배 샤루 뒤에 보면 나서죠 시서죠 제사야 담메다 대고 봐 야구째 레메도 아삼 딜에 삼대 담불 할게베네 셈에 담보하니 류도저 의지랑 신세 나주메 차주메 야구세부레 아삼 딜에 잡아시거래 라동게 ene paruje ngarajo neta luda lonche tozo nyamongyo ade chakshende mevre gore zawane pangyo mare ngyo ase dore ngyo nega ngod gyo mevre chadore september tempo chad internet something niba se sumba se mabu driver ene sungmi su kanga phamogo che su kanga samutang mare namga dabusheji samutang komsha gore namga thayas 남과 세지 삼다 바루제 남과 삼다는 셈템부 차네 칠로 삼로다는 드림도 삼 나로 셈코라는 셈때제 꼼샤거래 남과 대 남시타야스 뒤에 야고면도 사 지하면서 다 동바코라 깨게 매버 꼼샤거래 남과 대 남시 지하면서도 이제 두시 메미 시지스라 삼로 매버서도 지대서도 사와서 제셔도 어떤데 지도니 제만 할 때는 깨바만 땡제 대제 대톱거래 이나 남바체는 대점 개첨부 매송거라 신에다 하던 주베데 동반이 또에 장주고 셈 장반이지 삼바 상으로 다 코알에 타리에 또 상계지 고만 토에 대체도 신에다 하던데 공부데서 개마도 띵제 장장 공산에는 개만 먹고 삼로마다 대기어라 딜이야 할래부 요마르 나라주 남주 디 샥바치기도 다디 와지랍네 디메도 까담베 디 가서 기시치에네 텔레시베레 조지 디 가서 domdom발 시베레 당아 땡지 템부텐데 텐데 탑송 생아 땡지 템부시라요 시베레 아니 손에 파손에 계란에 중 장세 양다베 따마고네 땡지 템부시지 곰데네 계란 샥바치사가 내리 끼그르다 손에 샥바치사 나라저 하츠랑 분함서 껴암시도 살게를 깨바마부 대셔거를 저게면 아주 카세티티도 집이다도 그 집이 검진 버스 가져지 심지어 집이 세대 그 창에서 전에 대답제 맛에 군거리 집 마부 대결 다가시다 곰제게 말이데 디나시 제 깨바마부 대때 할래요 말이 쓴 거라 아주디 미콘바티에 셔도사 여와게 이다 전도 잘하처럼서 껴서 하처럼 분남서 껴암색도 자 하처럼 분남서 맞이셔서 거라 하처럼 분을 깨네 깨바마부 대대거라 그 sembiela 마요르지 대기어라 되게 페톨라라 투주톨라라 딜레단데 밀리덴 동gen존데 잠바니 중 장주 sem텐데 삼로다나 대야 타바 탐지 쳔베 토베 툴레 두거라 띵지 템버 짱짱 곰샤네 코 타바 탐지 쳔베 툴레 두요마 디짱짱게 어찌선자 계란 곰시다 유세 계란 나살 나오치 동자세 계란 나고 암조 틸 나동네 당신이 계란 마구에 띵지 유나야 송거라 제만 계란 샥바지사 내를 깨운다세 띵주장세 양답에 따와 마곰나서 저 신에다 하동 공매도 조 동반이 공야 코알라 타도 잠바 공야 니지 공야 텐데 돈달 셰기 와라 단당가 주디나 마 셰지 티시아서 담마도스야 지gam나 주디시라
Mm. So here, then, again, when we have achieved this kind of serenity meditation, then we move to the practice of insight. The idea is that we're not trying to achieve serenity in and of itself, but to conjoin that with insight. And so here, though, looking first at the practice of serenity, it says, this comes where under the heading of the practice of serenity, and this should be achieved first. And so to describe the sort of nature, the essence of it, serenity is that mind which has overcome distraction to external objects and which spontaneously and continuously turns toward the object of meditation with bliss and pliancy. And so this is describing then whatever sort of object of meditation, and one can take anything as an object of meditation. We see people who take like various types of form and whatever, but generally as Buddhists, we would take something like the body of the Buddha, and one tries to hold that object without letting the mind go to any other external object. But we're going to have to bring our mind back when it strays, when we notice that it has wandered away from that. We need to draw it back again and again. And so here, this is something where we are continuously sort of working to enhance this kind of faculty that we already have. We have the ability to remain for very short periods on a particular object, but then again, our mind sort of moves away, gets drawn to other things. And so if it strays, we need to have the faculty of recognizing that it has strayed and being able to bring it back. And over time, we are able to enhance this such that we are able to remain as long as we want on a particular object. But we have to be aware, A, of when our mind has gone somewhere else, or B, of when we're sort of falling into a kind of dullness, like say we're sort of falling asleep. We have to be aware of those instances happening. And so this, again, is in order to, we are developing this in order to generate insight, in order to be able to work on meditations like bodhicitta and love and compassion, developing ultimately the wisdom realizing emptiness. So this is something where, again, we don't want, so generally when it comes to serenity meditation, this is something that non-Buddhists engage in as well. And they can also engage in a union of serenity and insight that is not realizing emptiness. So we can have insight regarding, say, seeing the faults of the desire realm, the realm that we live in with these bodies of flesh and blood and so forth. Someone might look at that and say, oh, well, this is a really sort of unfortunate situation to be in, to have sickness and disease and have to deal with sort of supporting this kind of physical body. So it might be better if I were born in, say, one of the concentrations with a kind of mental body wherein I don't have to experience sickness and so forth. And so one can develop a kind of meditation based upon seeing the faults of the desire realm and actually proceed with a sort of insight that is recognizing the faults of more sort of subtle states. So someone might see, well, okay, I actually, if I didn't have a form at all, that would be even better. And so they strive for these sort of more subtle meditative states in the formless realm, beginning with endless space. And once they sort of see, oh, well, I don't want to be out in space, I'm going to turn inward to my own mind. And then we have endless consciousness, followed by nothingness, and then finally the peak of samsara. So it's even more sort of subtle states of mind based upon seeing the faults of those below. But the problem with this is that this kind of union of concentration and insight can lead to, say, being in that sort of state for eons and eons, but one is not making any progress toward liberation. We want a union of sort of concentration and insight realizing emptiness in order to free us from samsara. So once there was a student of Dromtonpa, and he came to him and sort of was saying, I have this really incredible incredible sort of meditative stabilization. And so, look what I've accomplished. And Dromdonpa was sort of like, well, you may have a level of meditative stabilization where even if someone, say, like bangs on a drum right by your head, you don't get distracted. But that's really nothing very special, because taking a birth with the sort of power of meditative concentration and, say, the form or the formless realms, I say, like a long-lived God, is not something that is to be desired. Basically, all of that lifetime will just be wasted experiencing this sort of meditative bliss, but not actually moving toward liberating us from samsara. So despite the sort of amazement at this level of meditative concentration, Dromtonpa said it would be much better to focus on things like renunciation and bodhicitta and the realization of emptiness, because otherwise you risk taking birth in a place where you're basically just wasting your time. So instead of seeking out those kinds of higher meditative states, we really are striving for a union of serenity and the insight realizing emptiness.
Oh yeah. What happened to me? Oh, dang it, man, yeah. Don't book in doing it so like you are no. Rabbi Chunga so like on the shoe. Dang it, man, Nico Kalasha, so young the pain and all shoe. Lock about Tessan, but upon some damn bus in you good. Lock about Tessan bus said it, Tebache, page at you law, and it to some symbol of Tessam chair. Ninju Chanju and the Beta, she never allowed on the Tezuko Tessam Chigdor. Vegetarian church. There are lock but some bus. Pon some dembas, 3 abortions and a comjag. Pon some dembas, comjag. The loga nidoa. The comjag, com capture, I tell a twingy charge, a Koran com capture, and it really a young kitchen and rock watching a shower till shower. And the Koran com capture there, and you could sigdon, but you talk about starch at the very written decision, very polo cigarette and football door, very written decision, and a cotton and it needs a and this sugar for calling God the Bashida and Namsa Contest, I am Sati Comgora. What in this, and yes, Tanda Koniku Stella Makena, and if I chill and Ronnie, some dances, social or condemn. Not to bus didn't do a charcoal, talk what it like what you Drosadoga. What in the part in boot in the social and take you and park a little part or some dancing go there. The magician Conis is a daku and Emperor Resduhara, Nikuja, Tinyanga, you do anything, talk what in you. New Masha, until the talk what the mango and the lab what chances. Any apart or two, any was sanction, any artist. That and then you must answer so good chutamu, don't chutamu trick of empire. Yet in the command loss order. What is doing in my net and this a computer? She had a loud down to the command and it's somebody Sanju some kind of computer or to this computer. Touches so compulsory attended Rayomado, Pejata the tick and Janja, commuter social on the com, Combalia, Lobjosia Mado Combia, the tradition Medua. And he also vegetation is result in the one per the winners, the German Buyora. Ringolia, Kambachuju and the Tabuda, Kambachuju Mambuyode. Or to welcome the drunk and they are the matter. Oh, to this is came, but did you say no? Yeah.
So here, then, when it comes to previously, there was sort of a setup where the Sangha, when they were in the temple, they would engage in, again, hearing and studying, like sort of reading the various texts, and then engaging in the sort of abandonment, so, meaning that they would do practices of meditative concentration, actually doing sort of meditation in order to abandon those things that were to be abandoned. And so there were various sort of methods in which the fully ordained Sangha would have the sort of junior monks as their helpers. And like when people would be meditating in the hall, and say someone was falling asleep, they would have a ball on a rope and actually like hit them in the head with this ball to wake them up. There are various sorts of like methods in order to keep people awake with sort of like various rope contraptions. I mean, sometimes if you're really like falling asleep, getting up and taking a walk around, or splashing the face with cold water and so forth, there are methods to sort of revive, get yourself waked up to be able to do that kind of meditation. So this is something that previously was done in the monasteries as part of the sort of communal exercise. However, nowadays, mostly the monasteries are reserved for study, and no one is, there aren't really like collective kind of sessions of doing meditation, but rather individuals are like say doing it in their own rooms and so forth. And so this is again, previously in Tibet, there were a lot of sort of places to go for say mountain retreats in order to have a place to accomplish this kind of serenity meditation, and people would make use of that. But this is something where we don't see it done as like a communal kind of practice in the monasteries anymore as much.
Oh yeah, tandi malosha. Oh, dashi ne ngode diswas. Oh, tende things ji tobya tandalia. And that and the dekab se tele mikbadi. Shine ngo cherwa. And it comes jag mikbadilia sumde shekdoa. Tandi ne ma yungu chere. Tene sumje tan la mikbas, pungam keche la mikbas. Ne sanje kula mikbas sumde shekdoa. Tene surbi ala jungi la sokba tene yorba. O tezu chama tanda de su tune. Tongbani ya tawone ngure tongbani la yang juge tabda ani jugba ta shuk simba ta tende sumna su tune. Surbi ala jungi la sokba ta chama tamjete. Tongbani la shukba tanda sokba ta ro. Tile baba ta ani rigbe cheba chene te tole lepsimba. Tende sumna su tune me gure se tongbani la mene tu chi shedo. Mi ti chojen de la pumbo da kamda keches. Pumbo nga kechi chuni kam chob gestina chotam je dodora. Kam chob je nan chotam je dodore. Pumbo nga nan du chotam je dodora. Kechi chuni nan chotam je dodora. Kam chob je nan chotam je dodore. Ti keshi ti che. Ane sanje je kula mi pas sum shegdo. Sura yana chungi ki ta chama tune tongbani le shugba da tongbani le baba da shugba da ro tongbani ki chetu ya tangbu jugba sheba ta wone yongure o tisum bi tonta la mine che ani pumbu kamda keji la mine komba sanje kula mine komba so sum shegdo o tandi ma lo shan de jire shine da la dong je mikba de shego da shine dingi la tangan zu khazu sam de nemba Shine dingi la mikbe che te kona number cheba kain ba tene hladon indes. Shine ji ngo kare rangi komje tendelia pa nami da yeng ba da chima me ba chebe chidan dende do chuzo ni sum shinga kaje tena te tongge te lu da sem la kange me ba kadenga ne lisim shinjang ge tewe sembe ngane mikbe le chidan dende do kol do ro tingi ji thosune shine ngone do tobra 다 뒤톱도 봐도 장구로와 당분에 봐 뒤치도 남도 망보 연구라 대kom나 야삼도 담다 강가 고그리야 축구 뒤치고 여도 대신에 곰도 가지고 된데 송구도 남도 마을을 친셔 삼서 땡기와데 소소 남도 가리나 고대 도산도 노여 말와 삼로 가와 코나 코라도 좀나도 야도 간도나도 게 또나요 말에 Tami bachikan su samlutan induza abu ngange male namdo saru chinsha samsa thank you ade tadikan su kudu dewe ma ya nang samko ya do bachi lega samni ya shenda dosa ya su kudu ya ma de shenda lesare ya ni kudu je tane sem de ju me bar jora tin namdo ngö simbare ma do namdo mauru chiyo ma de so ngara ju namdo mauru chinsha sanga ta ta yime ma shine ma gom le do re chinsha samita yanga yore Kodidu tonam yo mara kawachine chenja yushadi ke minduangajo. Semti tante te tene te da kando shagra. Nawa ke yo mare. Ta shine kumdu san chi kan su ta de ni made che ya do ya chu de tende che ani abo ta de namdo maru chin sha samsa tangi yora. Ti namdo maru chin ba mare namdo ngo sim pare. Tingeli ne namdo kariyona music ge chi yo mara ko kar ko na ta yu shagra. O ti ndiko 당분에 진짜 연구하도 거바지도 장 좋고 그래 정화주도 셈마 정도도 야야 생턴이 야고 있던 거래 정화다 거바스탄디나 마오네 용구라 띵진게 공매하게 되니 계획들이 요도 정화다 거바사 거바사에 대고 책방한테 검제 유지 많이 계신다를 촌도 시고라 대삼단도 대마대 파촌도 거바다 내가 지한다부터 고심보다 지지님 매지지 제모제 된데 템바들에 정화수도자 선배 공매도 숙천부처제 야부지 세부제 정구라 포바선부나 신제 야부제 누심구르마 숙지는 마사그라 숙제 야부심구라 심비 숙 매버제 나 세와데다 숙 매버제는 니 정화선도 걸걸리잖아 반도 니 고에다니 다 삼마다 대대 공격이 섬대샤게 와라 결이 정화수도 심비 나르드마 차도와 심비 그게 공매게 숙지와라 더바지와라 나까 또하지와라 어디만 총도네 걸걸리제고 정원 도자네 검제 유지 제도라니 구여데 텐데도가라 저 공개인들이 정화다 거바서 다 튼진 개체수들 가르스 잠바다 시신사 잠바세데 미버디 바텐제 대고라 산제 꾸르스 공군에 töten제 대고라 시신데 소바처리데 소바 소장게 당에 시바데 따다 제가 대도 대면도 때 산제 꾸 공부여라 대면 치료도 야추 공부여래 야마티프로 지도 야도 생토고여래 야티가 샤기여래 잠바다 시신이 부데 잠바데 미버 마집시 jel파 미유들 땅에 탁배 소리들에 시신들이 그 따다 될 때도 대면도 땅에 내려와 어디 잠바다 시신이 있거네 그 도도는 야추샤 근데서지 제 장도는 바로질 그봐야 용도 지도네 하고 요래 그봐 용도 지도네 네 하고 네 추샤네 바로지 파 그봐 맹게 차기라 마치와메 그봐 매배 야부지 때도 지던 된데도 걸도록 요라 어디도네 시신이 자라시다 저거 말로 그런 땅용 제샤고 그래 단다 고추도 장 시신 대신부만 보여래 배지 서서지 따는 마도 야나파 이 구도지를 야나는 현단 도샤그라 야고 장소는 거라 랭이 조소는 땅용 자세를 땅용 소바지 가지도 된데 따지요 말이니 그 주로시라 어디지 소는 되다.
So here again, looking at the nature of serenity, it says serenity is again, this kind of mind that has overcome distraction to external objects and spontaneously and continuously turns toward the object of meditation with bliss and pliancy. And so once one has attained that, then that which properly examines suchness from within a state of serenity is insight. So we develop this practice of serenity for the purpose of then developing that insight realizing emptiness. And here in this section, it talks about sort of three different objects that one takes as the object of this kind of serenity meditation. So first, there are the various teachings of the Buddhas, these 12 different branches of teachings of the Buddha. And then there are the various sorts of aggregates, the sense bases, and then the various constituents. So looking at those types of things. And then there is examining the body of a Buddha, taking that as one's object. So here, this is whatever one is taking as one's object, whether it is like the body of a Buddha, or one is thinking about the various sorts of aggregates and our various sense bases, and then the objects of those senses, all of those can sort of subsume all of the various phenomena. One is trying to bring the mind to a state where it is pacified from any kind of distraction and has a sort of clarity in its abiding on the object. So this is something that we have to develop over time. So until we reach the point where we are spontaneously and effortlessly able to remain single-pointedly focused with clarity on an object, we keep developing this by keeping our mind mind coming back and coming back and coming back. So here, when we say sit down to begin trying to do this kind of serenity meditation, there is the danger of thinking that all of a sudden we have more sort of conceptualization and thought going on when we sit down. And it's really not the case that we have more sort of distractions and conceptual thoughts, but it's that we're actually recognizing them. When we're sort of out in our everyday life, walking around and going to the store and so forth, we're not aware of all of the various sorts of things that come in and out of our mind. But when we sit down and try to do this kind of single pointed focus, we're all of a sudden going to be aware of every single thought and every single distraction. And so here, rather than thinking that it is increasing our various sort of conceptualizations and distractions, although of course there is the danger of that if one just sort of sits down and lets the mind go wherever it's going to go. But really, we're not increasing our various mental chatter. We're just becoming aware of it. We're recognizing it. And so here, when we are developing our practice of serenity, we need to deal with the two sort of main obstacles to developing serenity, and this is excitement and dullness. So when we have excitement or sort of this our mind getting distracted away to other objects, we have to be able to recognize that and bring it back. We also need to be able to recognize when we are giving into sort of a laxity or dullness, when we are not holding the object with as much clarity as we had before, when we're sort of losing the strength of our hold on that object. We need to recognize that and be able to bring back the kind of clarity and strength of holding that. Again, it's like the example of sort of holding on to a cup or a bowl. You don't want to be holding too tight to that, but you also can't be too loose such that you totally let it go. So the two main obstacles, laxity and excitement, are overcome by our two main sort of forces working against them, which are having mindfulness and introspection. So mindfulness is like a rope tying our mind to an object. We're trying to keep that object in mind, and mindfulness is really that which is focused on the object. And insight is the kind of awareness that we have strayed away from that object. So when we have this like spy of, not insight, introspection. Introspection is when we are able to be aware that we have strayed away. And so when we have that kind of spy of introspection, we are able to recognize when we have gotten distracted or when our mind has gone into a space of being dull or more lax. And we also need to develop this faculty such that we are able to recognize when we need to leave the mind alone in equanimity. When we have neither dullness nor excitement, one shouldn't be applying any kind of an antidote, but rather remaining in that state. So this is the way in which we enhance and develop the practice of serenity.
Oh yeah. Tande lo da. Shine tingi da ladong de shege do. Shine top chane ladong to gur do. Shine da ladong ni chane tambo sem che chu do nebe shine to bura. Top chane any sem che chu do nebe ngangne any yulia rangwine truma tu tandamba truma tu la sokba cheba che. Mibetile sem che chu ne simbe ngane cheba che ne tanda sem ha tunge. Cheba che to ji trambe ngale thakbe any lisim shenjang ke tawa luta assembly ke kange me ba tel hala chene cheba chene sesitu yutile juto da ni la ton to gora rayula shineji ngane rayula cheba che to ji trambe lisim shenjang ke tewe sembe shirap tel hala ton se gora ngame shineji kable lisim shenjang ke tawa la ba to gore shinele ne la ton de shirap ji kone yule cheba de top del hagmaro ati sonzal hagdon sigura yule sineti yule ne de amado ke yomardo talhadon de yule cheba chini yule ju kanga sheba sigdo ene ko te chansona chichu nebe ko ne cheba chini sonetini lusim ya shinjang de wa de ngale labar sigdo do o te sonzal hagdon sigdo ta sineti ni la mibe chese Shinege ni shine migbatula mini shine kibetse in ladon karchigo sne te kona number choba kaim batene ladon indis ta te kona ni du tuma tu ta de ka su tongi tok bal ladon shegora and then you may be you to turn down by 2 matula sober chevachene, or tennis hard on come good. Joba kain but the hard on in the Papa Kunjo tell us you get to Shine sem chechipani dos, Shine Mora. Hard on the hand about social talk about us. Usually I young talk about turn down by 2 matula sober social talk with shit up to cigarettes. She some batabos. Papa Comba never do a legends. Some then there. Sidari, Shine also saw at Gibatas. Hardon la Cabalas, ya Continental Sangelia Sugua. Shine the Cades Chelcores, Solcores, Tobachores, and Hardon la Caba Cades ya Sugua, Hardon la Cabalas. Catsebas, Saje Mason, Chambang, Che Tagba, number Shagwa, Didades, oh, Neba, Che Song Shaba, Yana Junila Soba, Che Tagba. Teni yana chungi la sokba sungba te sungura chamba nge che takba number shakba dita de doti yang nye be te longdu ten be te se sungrab yana chungi yorba no chung sanje chum den de sungrab yana chungi mingi takbe chu nam la sungura chamba nge che takba number shakba dita de se che tanye takba sanje sungshebe che de ya tanye takba de yore se karkar se na dita de doye tetan dode re sungora dode de sigra de karasna chigdan de logbu chama sungsha chigdan tenda ruru chenba chilu cheche pa sungsha sungora de dode de sungres 양기 녀바다스 양기 녀바스 좀 골이야 치루이나야 바르바르야 직제던 타말을 직제 요바도라 양기 녀베테스 치수제베 양기 지단 고도바 치루이나야 바다 탈이야 직제 요바도라 양기 녀베테스 그래서 롱도 담바다스 롱도 담베테스도 사제트는 자주 셈바다 년도다 tezulo maobanda dede yongure dele kigre tende longde tende yorwa o tezu khashelia kyawanga dede senile dede santande dichungwe de ser maobala dede yongure sungsaba mabu yorwa tezulia longdo tembete sugare sisu chebete sisu chebete ya sije kyangya su tikshani sumbatende yongdo tele sisu chebete chedo chebete sedoza ya shuwa po ya kandi shu tende mabche sanje rang ma song shaba temba nebe chedo sanje girwa chode shendal ba teni te temba ne chige chili kyune pa ya buja ha gone ne tendal song shaba tulya ene tisere chedo chebetes temba chedo nebe chedo song shaba teta lengshi desude doa dezule ina tanda kelongi timda kizu timma bu yora tezu timdo kaga lengshi de chikchung 당분에 팀 가가 제요 말아 사게 rab도 총세 최고도 좋고 텐데제 대마도 아니 지기야 시드 카세 사와라 속바다 아니 지 녀들 지 총선은 되게 텐데 셰샤스는 다 마음바나 되게 조금 마다 되잖아니 또한 되어다시 송샤비와 링시스라 나라는 녀들 지 총선은 티 가르쳐서 당님만 뒤골 깨져요 말다 그 가르쳐서 다 든든든 시시 연구도 고고야 링시 정도 판바르지냐 꼬마꾸야 지식 중에 띠가 거기 미잘라 기도하시 기초를 봐서는 상계에서 어디 기초마다 미잘라 컨디션이 꾸나 이제 판바 연구를 다시 송샤죠 들 링시 되시도 링시 되다 똑바 주베 되다 똑바 주베 되시다 빼다 빼고나 봐. 네 대다테 대다테리스 파 셔셔부터 똑바치베테 시고라. 똑바치베테다 대다부 중에 대다스 대다부 중에 대스도자 뭔지 중화셔부터라. 루주셔와 니마든데 중샤 산제데 대중화데 대중화데 개부든데 중화데 송샤스 마부여라. 어때서 대다부 중에 대스 개발합게 대다스 산제 좀된데 뭐 자주선배 내갑소 교원 된데 시는 디갑슨 된데 제반 디갑슨 된데 제베사라 땅물이 진게 소라 된데 허르도 땅물을 류친 발아서 뭐 된데 chanju선 ben내고 세요 어떠저 단들 기럽수시 바샤 된데 용도 개발합게 되다 신도 제베 대다서 요 되니 신도 제베 테스트 자체와다 사바다 자체와 군주 남진 남샤다 Tandambe Namshada Kunjubdan Tuzukanga Sorda. Sabada Kachive Namsha Gaber Sungbatelia, Shindu Gabe Tesidora. Medu Chove Tesidu Chanju Sambada, Ninganduda Tuzugu, Tumu Maibe, and then Tupu Duchuan, Nuba Puduchuan, Medu Chove, or Dilin Nubatin, the Tindu or Sung Shabtelia, Medu Chovete. Tana Power Tembete, Nicole. Tana Power Pabete, Kanda Chanju Samba, Namras. Oh, dear, Tana Pabetes, Tana Pabetes, Chunam de Randa, she singing Tana Pavsura. Metagua Sera, Chich Pumbunga, and the Metagua des Rangachins, Korang, or the Sura. She sings Lutin Metagua, Tungawa de Sera, she singing Chinachambe, Ranging all down, Rangi Kajut in the Buddha, or the Tana Tembete dance, Randa Chi singing. Ranking order, taking the casual to Stambatala. Tana about the Kanda, Chanju Semba Namla Sheba Teda, Chanju Sembe, Legbar Turso, or the Sura Yala Chungi was nature, Tagwan number Saba Yala Chungi, Mingitade do Asura. Oh, Chanju Sembe Ese, and it showed the Zukangalia, Tambutoma Tubachi Sungura. Chanju Sembe, Legbar Turse, Legbar Tubache, Tambu Tubache. Maraz Dawad number Sulia, Tuba Samba Combat Sumshegra. Tambu Tugura. Tede Tubeko some river. Oh, tended in the session, attended in the session, tended in the song doa some santera. That Samba said, Society Tunda Karina, Segua, Tunda, Susu Sam Tangura. Susu Sam Madana Tina, the Shesha say, Mado Susuke, Hakuyo Marwa. The members say, Tube turned the Takade and one attended red with some take to Saint Segura, Susu Shemba Segura. Tell us some June Segura. Legbar Turs, Legbar Song Segura. They chick to the Tambu, Susu Legbar Song Sanjay, tended the Song Soas, tended the Song Soas, Kana Labia, and Dijetum Jembedaqua, Suggestum Jedunga, Chutam Jetons, Damaba Song Soas, Dijetum Jembedaba, Candes de S, Samlota, Susu Samlota Dusa. And if some Jones get it, so some town at any joint, Shirap Chigura, tell us some Jones, tell Jimmy Jukura. Or Sanjay Kaduina, Sosu Chebachi, Sosu Chebachi Sungua, Galon Dagam Kenam Gisuina, near Sheba Kanganam Sayi Machese, Chitan Town, Nature, Mambu, any nature to Sanjay Sungsha Yembe Samna, Painter Yorda, Sosu Hago Yomare. Society is no on the Sanjay Tende Sungsha. Dina Shere that was some. And the Sanjay Sumbe Shida Lambda to the Tabajigra on it in the Reshasam, Tis and Pengidusam. Oh, Tinde, some June said, 2 June, some June, Kumjun Sigara. Kadun do Chidi Kadun do Chebachera. Combe, any Kumjunche. Ye Legbar Ta said, oh, the Ye Legbar Ta said, some Jorva, and then the Sig Legbar Song, Sig Kadun do Chambachi Sera. And the teacher Yata Chigiton that Legbar Takje and Susuni Comgo race Gora. Ye Legbar Gora. Ye Legbar Tas or this some Junderva. Ye Legbar Tas, Tibet and the Sosu Semgita, Takje and Hako Chevore, still as Ye Hakosun and some Jungi syrups, Tujungi syrup, some Jungi syrups. Tujun de Shangi Sigitu Setere. Some Jungi syrup did race, Nahaku, tender race at Tender Laptura. Some Junset, Kumjungi syrup. The race a Hakon Dimar, one Dizetam Jemedaba, Bahakon Dimar, Tayana Yando Comgramado, Nazuka Toma Meban, and Tangzilla Com de Yora. Tameba, Ale, Tameba Redo, some Dimar, Nazut Tangzit, Toma Meban, Com de Yana Yando Comne, Magumna, Pena Severity, Sebacomga Hakona, Sabayana Yando Magumna, Namsa Condushine, Sabamab Chagmarto, Case, Sabamab Condumab Chagmarto. In Hanga Kimberto, take this about Tabasabacum, Yasabacum, Parusing, Contumesanga Chayungora. Or to Delicum Juswada, Yana and the Comdicia orders. Wombo Severation is a Comco Kevamara, the one Buddhist or the one Buddhist, that has you, sir. Diana and the Comco Kevamara, because 7 money went in below Kevamara. Ngaraji Guli Lockdown Mambu is a Tipa Maps and Yana Yandu Comjuting Gora. Janju Sembe Legbar Tershera, Tradition. Yiji Legbar Tash, Samjundice. And Toy Shindu Togbar Senes, the Comjundere. Oh, Dabe Sabu Jaton, Samjung Tony Yana and the Comno Hangi Kesona. Oh, the one there is some Hangi Kesona, German Mambasura. Or tell you, I need to Comjun Sigora. Medaba Tambutavachera, Tene Samluta Shimbache, or Medaba Kizikazin Gurgudoasam, Kudan Keletenico Kekurasam, Pinasosuracina, Sumbucheta, the Medaba, Shua Medaba, Sumbu Medabara, Kalasaudu, Ungu Kudu, Sobutriniche Wudu, Kangal Tenani at the Sumbuchita Hudomado, Nangum and Sumbu Hitanda, Tegesi, Rawas, Tege Yomara. I think the old Midabare, some kitchi Gurgu, some kitchi, so Sumbuch and Tegu, some. Oh, this is some Juhako. No change. Oh, so easy legbar. Oh, this come Paruchil Medabare, some long Agate Yongre. Tambutanga, social Medaba, some kitchi, not Sumbuch and Tegu, somebody Medaba, some Jurgu, some Rochimedua. Trouble with saying man and take Tandate, Mahobal thinking some good amount to see. Could you tennis, somebody tells you, to some corruption with the Yana Yando come Yana Yando come to the long angi. Namjung and Tanzing Angi Kivanashi. Miji Conto Lion City Lapson, Namsa Conto San Angi Kiongo, not Conto Sagi, some college Yakumedua. Take Yamogo Chas and next German mind Basagora. Tambunga do Chegorapa, Tindrabuchi, and Paruchility on a rad hand, Benganga Suki, Kesona, Kumjun Sevartelia, Kumjun. Oh, Toya Shindu talk about Chena, Techipu Imber do this, or Teniku, Tojun, Samjun, Kumjun Chene, Tenine Embel of do there, Nando Yanda Barshane. And this same the Nando Suchi, Yamasama, Nando Comjet del Simshane, Sungora. Shane, Chidar Legbarsan be church de Dani, Yela Chejins, also some Tujun, Samjun, Kumjun Chebe church de Yela Chejins. Sem Kanga Yela Chebe, Sem de Nando Tunchasu, Yela Chebe Yela Cheto, but Tune Comburanga, do it in the yard. Namsan Church is a chick tune, Jimadaraji, to do some distribution, Namsan, never chamber is a tongue samna, my dear. Tico should the Sherlag in Gada, he said, Gada, he said. Namsachi, some journey church, and the teacher must know that you should came and do some call you say, Gada, he said. Namsachi. Nobody shop to call them some medal child with some church teacher Roching Mara, Lella Combo Matache. But in this sometimes you measure it, in this sometimes should the use I surely Congade Resera. After I had the Lella of Surgeon and Young some any color Kaguda Tayam, you show cigar out in the members' squad. Kalikabi, some Sakaran Gordon, achieving some school or no. What the Mandras or Tipa do.
So here, when it comes to then this serenity and insight, again, that which properly examines suchness from within a state of serenity is insight. So here it's actually, we're using the word insight, but it's really like special insight or superior insight, because what we're gaining is a kind of superior understanding of reality. Once one has gained this kind of ability to remain single-pointedly focused, within that state, one engages in examination. Is this thing established from its own side? Is there inherent existence? What is the nature of these things? And it is that kind of wisdom that arises from analysis that we refer to as special insight, when it is specifically recognizing emptiness or the nature of reality. And once one gains that kind of insight, there is another level of mental and physical bliss bliss and pliancy that arise from that, in the way that we get when we attain serenity, a special kind of mental bliss and pliancy, such that there is no difficulty remaining however long we want in that kind of meditation. So too, when we have achieved special insight, we gain another sort of superior level of mental and physical bliss and pliancy. So here again, we are talking about this insight that is realizing emptiness. And this is something that we do based upon taking various objects. So here I'm going to turn to the quotation from the Cloud of Jewels Arya Sutra, which reads, "Serenity is a single pointed mind. Insight makes specific analysis of the ultimate." So again, those are sort of the nature of those two. And then also from the Unraveling the True Intention Arya Sutra, Maitreya asked, "Oh Buddha, how should people thoroughly search for serenity and gain expertise in insight?" So here, this then goes into the answer from the Buddha, which says, "Maitreya, I have given the following teachings to the bodhisattvas: sutras, melodious praises, prophetic teachings, verses, specific instructions, advice from specific experiences, expressions of realization, legends, birth tales, extensive teachings, marvelous teachings, established doctrine, and instructions." So he first describes the kind of teachings that he's given, and then goes into how bodhisattvas should properly listen to these teachings and so forth. So here, looking at the various categories of teachings, and I'll just go through these quickly. One becomes an expert in insight through looking at the various sort of general characteristics of things and their various specific qualities. And one does this by sort of looking at the various teachings of the Buddha. So sutras here are sort of concise things that have been gathered together. Then we have the sort of verses that are praises. So generally these melodious praises will be in verse, but not all verses are going to fall into being melodious praises. There are those teachings given by the Buddha where he gave prophecies about something coming about in the future, and this sort of being will be born and so forth. Then there are the various teachings that are in verse. There are then like specific instructions. So advice that came up in a specific sort of context in which he gave specific instructions for that kind of situation. There are also sort of advice from specific experiences. So say, for example, when it comes to the various codes of the Vinaya and creating, well, what is a downfall and so forth, those were sort of created from various experiences. Something happens and then they make up a rule or teaching about it. Then there is the expressions of realization. So things giving examples of various types of realizations and so forth. Then there are legends or sort of various historical teachings that the Buddha gave. There are the birth tales. This is one we might be more familiar with, where the Buddha talks about his previous lives, giving kind of teachings from those various lives. Then there are extensive teachings, so things that lay out sort of things in more detail. We have marvelous teachings, sort of describing the various extraordinary qualities of enlightened beings, for example. And then there is established doctrine and instructions. So here, this established doctrine and instructions can cover things like the various general characteristics of things, the individual kind of qualities of phenomena, like things like impermanence and so forth. So that is in brief these 12 categories. And then turning to the way that one should approach these, it says bodhisattvas should properly listen to these teachings, remember their contents, and train in verbal recitation and thoroughly examine them mentally. So here, again, all of the things that the Buddha has taught, we should begin by hearing these things, listening to them in order to gain a kind of wisdom that arises from listening. And this stage of having listening and then one's own reflection and meditation is often emphasized and is extremely crucial. First, we have to know, we have to hear things, but then we really have to engage in contemplation for ourselves. We We can't just sort of kind of recite back what we have heard without actually gaining any deeper understanding. We need to think about these things for ourselves. So when we think about all life is suffering, that which is in the nature, or sort of all things are impermanent, and that which is in the nature of being impermanent is suffering, and so forth. And all phenomena are selfless and empty. We need to not just be able to say those things, but actually have an understanding that is arisen from our own reflection. So engaging in our own investigation and analysis is crucial in order to find a kind of understanding based upon our own reasoning. And so once we have found that level of certainty, then we engage in meditation, that kind of repeated familiarizing the mind on a deep level with these various concepts. Because when we think about counteracting something like our grasping at permanence or grasping at some kind of a self, we have countless lives where we have been habituated to those kinds of wrong views, those wrong ways of thinking. And so in order to counteract that, we have to develop a real strength of conviction that arises from first hearing about something, then thinking about it, and then meditating on it. Like how it comes with patience. We aren't immediately able to be patient, but once we start to develop that sort of quality, we're able to reduce our anger slowly over time. So this kind of process of mind and training the mind and developing qualities is not the sort of level of knowledge like knowing something is yellow or knowing it's blue. We have to recognize that it's much deeper than that. And we need to, because our wrong views are so strong, we're so habituated to them since beginningless time. It takes this kind of repeated familiarization in order to bring forth this kind of uncontrived, unfabricated sort of understanding that arises spontaneously and naturally. Like when it comes to understanding that things are impermanent, we begin by hearing about impermanence, learning about how things are momentary, and then we have to begin examining them for ourselves. Like say thinking about our body and thinking about the ways that it's impermanent in that we like have to eat, we have to take care of ourselves and our body. It doesn't remain static in any way. And when we begin to look into each individual moment, we come to recognize that it's not even remaining static for even a moment. And at some point, when we've found certainty in that through contemplation, we then repeatedly familiarize the mind with this by meditating on it again and again. And at some point, like in the way that we are able to counteract our anger and our self-grasping and all of those, this will be able to overpower those kinds of wrong views. And once we have developed the wisdom arising from meditation, our understanding is unfabricated and uncontrived. So we need to have a real respect, though, that this is not something instantaneous. We aren't going to make an instant change. We need to be able to think about doing this over the long term. And we also shouldn't have this sense of like expecting immediate results and then find, oh, this is too hard. And we sort of toss it aside. We let it go. But here, as it explains, again, going back to the quotation, so bodhisattvas should properly listen to these teachings, remember their contents, train in verbal recitation, and thoroughly examine them mentally. With perfect comprehension, they should go to remote areas and reflect on these teachings and continue to focus their minds upon them. They should focus mentally only on those topics that they have reflected about and maintain this continuously. That is called mental engagement. So again, this kind of continuity, engaging in it again and again and again, is really crucial for developing the wisdom arising from meditation.
Oh yeah. Oh, that is so. That shushin start on that and that. Oh, Sineji Migba, Sum Song Song. Oh, T Sumbutula. That shushin lamb, Mando Neba Tela, Lushin do Changba, Teda Comne. Only Lushin do Changba, Lule. Devil Mange Kale, you have in the same Lule, Lung, Comcam, the same day I was to tell you, China Lung to down to the Abochan. Ni Lushin do Changba, take a similar Shin do Changba, Tenamato, Kale Canada, and the Chayongo Mardo. Oh, they do. Tether shoes and tell a lemon do never tell us. Mikbati come in lemon do never tell us. Lucian do Changba. Lube Changbachin, Tenamato, Kale Omare. Lugnalia, Simde, Shichikan to Lung to the Yabucha, Chinalia. Only relate to Young Gordon, Simde, Xinjiang, Lu Xinjiang, you got you order. Shindu Changbar Juba Kayan Batani, Shine Shechala, or Tende, Sim Chichi to Netumbe, Chitan do Netumbe, Kesoni, Shine Toba, the Esungora. Pedana Chanju Samba Shine also Choa, Shebana, Shine also chose to attendage and the Comje Uchi Mini, only to Kalekam Yana Yando Comne, Chema Maimba Kesona, Shine Toba, the Esungora. The Shindu Chamba, the Sim Shindu Chamba, Tomne Tinila Nedes. 다 신의 검열로 심장기 도와 톱사로와 심지 넘버링 영화 반에 지들 선배 최 등이세 심지 현달이 영화의 반에 지들 선배 최대다 아니도 등인 전기 주요 송이 소소 똑바르지 매버지 등인 전기 주요 송에서도 심리야 강 공부되게 라난지 요르와 둔지시 그랬다 둔지 똑바르 있는 둔지시 상계 꾸려지샤 아주 당분 밀 때 Sanjay Kutendishua, some Tajing Congress and Sanjay Kusam Tangina, Dissemble Chargadua, oh, Tilia Sigora, Dikunguara, Comede, Pajo de Yavati Samatan, Simas was assembly charge you, simply charge them with the Conguar, oh, Tilia and Desigora, Casualty. Sunyese, Dingin Jew Sunyese. Pajo Yungone, what is Sunye Social Assembly Charter or tell a thing is Sunyesora. Namjungazu, mid of Sinema two things in Tandamana, Yanti Assembly Chayadua, meeting Sunye Chayorava. Longboard is chaining image chain it under me Tom and Assembly Chayadua. This Sunyero, ordination Comja, Yukarina, Teen Travels Assembly Charter with the things in the Sunyesora. Number upon or the things in the Chu Sunye, social talk about just a shirap, the social talk about it. Come J. Udicigura, social assembly child, the things that you Sunye, the shirap, the social talk about chase, some time. Member chase, Sushi, the social similar Tatong when you come get it, social similar now and then she, Nezula Medua, some member chase. Namju Nazu Samtandu, Chukarina, turn number 2 and some Kodoa. Tadi Hardon Conduza, turned down by Mavate, you may say, but she turned down by Mavate, Comguada. Turned down by Mavate, Comdu Namju now, then when I say Mavate, Namzula, and then you know, one let in the Medua, some Mavate Sigora. The Benangarazo died of Sindon Social Doji. I did one in good machine. Oh, did it? Oh, membership was things in the only tip of the cheese, some cheshana, yeah.
So, here, then, when it comes to this kind of process of developing serenity, we have that which we have reflected on, and we continuously maintain this kind of focus, and that's called mental engagement. And when the mind has been repeatedly engaged in this way, and physical and mental pliancy have been achieved, that mind is called serenity. So this is really the nature of serenity, is when one has repeatedly engaged in this kind of meditation, such that the ability to place the mind single-pointedly on an object is unfabricated, is uncontrived, and one develops a kind of mental and physical bliss and pliancy, such that there is no difficulty, say, physically remaining in this kind of meditation, nor is there any sort of mental difficulty in remaining in this meditation, but rather it just brings about a kind of blissful experience. And the sort of ability to stay single-pointedly focused is uncontrived. It's sort of naturally arising at this point when one has developed serenity. So this is how bodhisattvas properly seek serenity. And when the bodhisattva has achieved physical and mental pliancy and abides only in them, he or she eliminates mental distraction. So the phenomenon phenomena that has been contemplated as the object of inner single-pointed concentration should be analyzed and regarded as like a reflection. So when we are meditating, no matter what the object of meditation is, there is a kind of mental image, sometimes translated as like generic image of the object that arises. So even if we say like looked at the body of a Buddha, we're mentally creating an image of that Buddha body that is the object of our meditation. Or if it's some sort of topic that we have thought about, that mental image is arising as the object of our meditation. So we should recognize that this appearance of whatever object it may be, is like a reflection. It is not the object itself, but rather this is our mental image of an object. It's sort of like a reflection of that object. We could think about it how when we say normally see a person a lot, but we haven't seen them for some time, we can still call up an image of that person, or we can call up an image of a place that we have been to. This is the kind of way that one has a mental image that is the meditational image. And one then takes that sort of reflection and engages in analysis using our insight, recognizing that although there's this appearance of something, whatever object it may be, it doesn't actually exist in the way that it appears. Things appear to us as though they have some sort of ultimate real existence, but they don't actually appear in that way. So this reflection or this image that one takes as the object of meditation should be analyzed and regarded as like a reflection, using these tools of insight. One within that state of abiding single-pointedly engages in this kind of analysis.
뭐야? 다들 땡이 생기 주요 중에 대달라서도 시제대 대 넘버 제바다서도 진입에 최도서 넘버 제바다서로 풍부가 감소배 계시 중이셔라. 아니 집에다가 동해와서를 저술시거라. 군주배 최도서 진입에서도 군주배 최도시거라. 대달라 시제대 대 넘버 제바 진입에 최를 넘버 제바체. rabdo number jebasdu ani chitawe chotosula number jebase tongbani tosul so ani yonso tokba dansi shirabji jebachene yile shibani chaman de surin de taran de chejire so yuji purin jebate yuso kaga jeshin bade sora yonso tokba dansi ani yonso jeba dansi 양다 버도베세 알레자 망아 십신 타와체네 쥐바들라 용서 쥐바다서도 서바다서 서바스도 공도 쥐바들서 로 서바 서토바 셰토바 얘는 더바다서 더자 시무르 제바 더바다서 지단 제바다서 어디 소소소소 카가카가 제드서다 지단 제바 대장 십신 타와체네 파 소소소 개발은 제바다. 따와나서도 출신도 따와 실제 내주치도 내바신도 출신도 따와서도 출신도 따와다. 출신도 따와다. 똑바 강의 받더니劳动 세샤오시라. 로 생기더니 뭐 내주다 템바라 학발도 똑바 강의 받더니劳动 세샤오시.
So here, then continuing in the text, it says, this reflection or image, which is the object of single-pointed concentration, should be thoroughly discerned as an object of knowledge. So here we get into some various sorts of terms. Whatever kind of object one has taken for one's meditation, whether it's something like impermanence or looking at the various aggregates and the sense bases and the constituents and so forth, one then engages in this kind of analysis. So here it says, it should be completely investigated and thoroughly examined. So here, the completely investigated is referring to investigating the sort of varieties of phenomena, looking at the conventionalities, examining conventionalities is referred to with this kind of term of completely investigated. And then thoroughly examined is looking at the way that things actually are, things as they are versus things in their varieties. And then it says, practice fortitude and to take delight in it. So here again, when it comes to engaging in this kind of meditation, one needs to have this sort of fortitude, the ability to bear with whatever may come up. And one also should have a sort of delight in it. And then it says, with proper analysis, observe and understand it. This is what is known as insight. So here again, with this kind of in accordance with the way that things are, one engages in proper analysis, referring to sort of the specifics of various things. So I think here we could say like observing it is seeing the way that things are, and understanding it again is getting at both the sort of conventional level of understanding as well as the ultimate level of understanding. And so this is what is known as insight.
Oh yeah. The direct changes symbol Ladon la Keba in Ocean Sonsos. Or Chitawa that Chinebe Chola Sobato, Simchi to Neve Ton and Nichabachene, Conduciva Sege, Shiraptilla, Laton Segre. Tatilla name Lurba, Shine Mumba Truban Dube, Toma, the Shin Dodidans. That Shine Tambu Truban Deva Tege, Tambo any, Number Truban Dube, Toma, Tambo, Dodidna, Yang Nebe Tela Soba, Sunrabi and La Sunitalia Sheswa. Dodete the young Nebe Tela Soba, Sunrab Yala Juni Tadane, Tasunrab Yala Juni Bodese, Tishingila Shoades, Tishing is the Tombanil. Surabiala Juni Sheshaba Kanga de Shunkashete Tishingila Shoade, Shunkashe Tishingila Babare, Tishirab the Chabachan Tishingila Babares, Shoas, Tishingila Shoa, Tishingila Baba, Babas, Tishingila Babas, Sumshegdwa, Tambudela Tishingila Shoas, Tishingila Chobache, Tishingila and Babas, Tishingila. Shirab the Chabas and the Leb Symbati Soda, Dos Symbati Soda, Tishingila Babas, Tishingila Shubas and Babas, Tishingila Shuba, Shusunge, or Tendesum Shegdoa. That in and the Midabada Dungawala Sobatambade, Tishingiliane, Chibe Tapson, Tishingila Shola Segura, etc. Tishingila Chobam, Tishingila Shoa said, Midabada Dungawala Sobatambatu. Tishingilia Tibe Tabre de Ora, Tibe Tabimbe Tishingila Shelwa de Etc. Then it Tameba Ragbat Dembala Soba Secret, Tame Ragbat Dembala Sobasana, Tagji Rawachin get Tamebasana, Ragwade, Tagba Yenge, Chibu Yenge, Tendetayo Marisera. Yayana Pumbule Tension Betamebas, Pumbule Bekaga Yenge Tamebasane, Tame Ragwadwa, Tamil Taramabushe or no. Oh, Tame Ragbat Batazo, and it Tishingila, Digasere. Tishingila, Tribetabim Tishingila, Tishingila Baba said in better. Tishingila Baba. Tishingila Baba said. And then your Baba Sukas, Tishingila Subar Shaba. Tishingila Subar Shaba, Mushi Tishingila Tanya Bulla Sugar Shibasora. Tame Tramutambatozone, Tishingila Babasigra, Shiraji Chabas and the author, Tambu Rabatos, Anthony Tautar said that on when you want to Tantamba Ramuna to do our Samsa, or Tendetos and it, Tishingila Babasigra, Baba Basa, Lebas, Lepsimbas at it. Oh, Tiji Labna Tambu, Disum, Disilapsana, Comjet and the Shade of Rasura, Biala Suni, Tonda, the two Dune. Tishingila Chokbata, Tishingila Shukbata, Tishingila Baba, Tisungunal Tune, Conguares, Shegdua. Yeah.
So Thus, bodhisattvas are skilled in the ways of insight in terms of their understanding how to engage in this kind of reflection within the state of serenity on the varieties of phenomena and the mode of phenomena. So here, getting back to this sort of actual practice of serenity, then it says, the yogis who are interested in actualizing a serenity mind should initially concentrate closely on the fact that the 12 sets of scriptures, the sutras, melodious praises, and so forth, can be summarized as all leading to suchness, that they will lead to suchness, and that they have led to suchness. So here, this is referring to the fact that these yogis who are interested in actualizing serenity understand that these various scriptures of the Buddha can be sort of summarized into these three categories. So those that teach, say, for example, impermanence and suffering and so forth, these are methods that will lead to emptiness eventually. It'll sort of get one going in that direction. So there are these three kind of terms here. And then there are those that will lead to suchness. So for example, there are teachings that help bring one closer to an understanding of suchness. So here again, they're trying to sort of make the distinction between these three levels. There's first those that are sort of pointing in the direction of suchness. And again, suchness is referring to emptiness. There are those that are getting one closer, sort of leading one into that general direction. And then there are those that arrive at, that have actually gotten us to the sort of understanding of emptiness. So for example, there are various teachings where, say, one explores a more coarse kind of selflessness, looking at whether there is some kind of permanent, autonomous, unitary sort of self. And there are those teachings that say, teach us that there is no such self, and there is, say, no self apart from the aggregates, which is a more coarse kind of understanding. But that teaching in and of itself brings us closer to emptiness, although it's not yet sort of like caused us to arrive at suchness or at emptiness. Those more coarse understandings allow us to sort of turn in the direction of emptiness, to get closer to emptiness, and finally to arrive at that point of emptiness. So yogis who are interested in actualizing serenity should understand this and concentrate closely on these different scriptures.
Oh yeah, then the change of the teaching la baba seswa, or the teaching la de casora. Rigbe teaching la baba said, Rigbe tartu teaching la baba se sheba soda. She tatu ge choja tamje sora biala jongi ge tatu ge choja tamje. Raba teaching to 2 days, teaching la shuba, teaching la baba, teaching la baba. Sungunal Tunisigora. She Tatuki Choja Tamja Tishini to Tude, tell us some Yavara Shakbati, may you tambu to the door. Then you were the Pumbuda come to Geshe Yeshe. Sumbatene, Tishin Shibakula may you sum shaven and tambu to soda, or teach soon and just.
So here, then again, this is describing that the all of the various sets of scriptures of the Buddha can be summarized into those that are sort of pointing us in the direction of emptiness or suchness, that they will lead us, get us closer to emptiness or suchness, and that they have led there, that they have actually, there are those that have arrived at that kind of teaching. So the ultimate sort of topic, subject of all of these teachings is ultimate reality, but there are those that sort of lead to it in indirect kind of ways. And so this is for those who are interested in actualizing serenity, this is one potential topic that they could take, meditating on the various scriptures of the Buddha. Then there are those kinds of meditations on the various aggregates, sense bases, and so forth, the various constituents. And then there is meditation on the body of a Buddha. So we've first gone through the first of these, looking at the various scriptures.
오야 도치 테네데스 다트트서 아야 도치.
So thank you. The time is up for today, so we'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Geshe Tuchiche. You've given us a lot to think about this week. And thank you again, Katrina, for your very clear interpretation. The next teaching is next Saturday, March 12th at 8:30 Pacific time. And we'll conclude with some prayers and dedications now.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path and all spiritual friends who practice it have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losong's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayame. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzing Gyatso Chenrezi, may you stay until samsara ends.
오야. 오야 도치.
Tushana.
오야.
Sapimba Jema Jeo.
오야야 나서 어도치. 오야.
See you next Saturday.
By the waves of aging, sickness, and death.